Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the buildings that shape our skylines. We walk by them, we work in them, we shop in them every single day, but who actually makes them happen? Let's get into it. Seriously though, have you ever just stopped and looked up at some brand new gleaming tower and thought, who came up with that? Who paid for all of this? And who actually put all those pieces together? It's a question that gets really fascinating really fast. And here's the kicker. The answer is never just one person or one company. It's this vast, complicated, interconnected ecosystem. You should really think of it like a rainforest, right? You've got all these different species, or in our case, stakeholders, all competing for resources, sure, but they also kind of depend on each other to survive and grow. This is the story of that ecosystem.
Okay, so every story has to have a beginning. And in the world of commercial real estate, that beginning is almost always a spark, an idea in one person's mind. And this is where we meet our main character.
The developer. This is the entrepreneur of our story. This is the person who looks at an empty parking lot and sees a bustling office building, or sees an old, rundown warehouse and imagines these amazing, trendy apartments. They are the ones who dream up the project, they rally the troops, and they drive it forward from just a thought to an actual, physical reality. But a vision is just step one. Before a single shovel can hit the dirt, the developer has to run this incredibly difficult obstacle course. First, they've got to spot the opportunity. Then they have to somehow get control of the land itself. After that, there's this long, painstaking process of getting all the approvals from the city. And finally, the massive task of lining up the money. And they absolutely cannot do it alone. Right from the get-go, they are working with two huge groups. First, you've got the government bodies that control all the zoning and permits. They're basically the rule makers. And second, you have the design professionals, the architects and engineers who start turning that big vision into a practical, buildable blueprint. Okay, so you have a vision and you have a plan, but you still need the fuel to make the engine run. And in real estate, that fuel is capital. And we're talking about a lot of it. This is where things get really interesting because, well, money changes everything. Now, the money to build these huge projects comes from all sorts of places. You've got your traditional commercial banks, of course, but you also have these giant life insurance companies, and they're looking for stable, long-term places to park their cash. Then you get into more specialized players like CMBS lenders who bundle up loans into securities, kind of like making a financial product out of mortgages. And more recently, you've got these debt funds that can be more flexible, but also, a bit riskier. And this right here, this reveals this fundamental tension that's at the heart of literally every single deal. The developer, the owner, wants to borrow as much money as possible, right? That's leverage. It maximizes their potential return. But the lender, their goal is to limit that exact same thing, to minimize their risk. The owner wants freedom, flexibility. The lender wants strict rules to make sure they get their money back. It's a constant tug of war, a negotiation that really shapes the entire project. All right. The money is secured, the blueprints are in hand. It is finally time to go from paper to physical form, to turn those architectural drawings into a real, three-dimensional structure that reaches for the sky. And this is where the construction team takes center stage. You've got the general contractor, who's basically the director of a blockbuster movie, managing this entire chaotic process. They're the ones who hire all the specialized subcontractors, the electricians, the plumbers, the HVAC guys, and all of this happens in constant coordination with the architects who designed it, and critically, the engineers who make absolutely sure the whole thing won't fall down. So, the building is finished. It's beautiful, it's structurally sound, but right now, it's just an empty, incredibly expensive shell. So how does it actually become a valuable asset? It happens through tenants. This quote really says it all. Whether it's a big company leasing office space, a retailer selling coffee, or families renting apartments, it's the tenants who pay rent. That rent is the cash flow. It's the lifeblood of the building that, in the end, determines what it's worth. Without tenants, all you have is a very, very costly liability. So, how do you find these tenants? Well, that's where the brokers come in. They are the essential matchmakers of the market. These people live and breathe this stuff. They know who's looking for space, which buildings are empty. They connect all the dots and then make the deals happen. And here we go again with that same tension, just with different players. You've got the listing broker, who works for the landlord. Their job is simple: get the highest rent possible. But then you have the tenant rep.
They work for the tenant, and they're fighting to get the lowest rent and the best possible deal. It's this adversarial, but totally essential, dance.
Okay, so the building is built, it's filled with tenants, you might think the job is done, but it's not. Not by a long shot. Now that building has to be managed like a living, breathing business, and a whole new set of players has to take over.
And it's so important to understand the difference between these two roles. The property manager is on the ground, handling the day-to-day stuff, fixing leaky faucets, collecting the rent, keeping all the tenants happy. The asset manager, though, they think like an investor. They're focused on the big picture. What's our long-term strategy here? Should we do a major renovation? Is now the time to sell? They manage the property as a financial asset.
Now, with all these different people acting on behalf of the owner, a classic risk pops up. It's called the principal-agent problem. And this is really just about human nature. It's the simple fact that an agent, like a broker or a manager, might be tempted to prioritize their own interests, getting a bigger commission, over the best interests of the principal, who is the owner. Making sure everyone's incentives are aligned is a huge, constant challenge.
We've been following the life of a single building, from idea to reality. But now we have to zoom out, way out, because every single one of these players is operating inside a much larger context, being pushed and pulled by powerful forces way beyond their control. And the biggest force of all is the market cycle. During an expansion, money is cheap, lending is loose, and everybody is building like crazy. But when a downturn hits, capital completely dries up, projects grind to a halt, and lenders get very, very nervous. This leads to a distress phase, where the really smart, well-capitalized players can find some incredible deals. And then eventually, demand comes back, recovery begins, and the whole cycle starts all over again. It's a constant ebb and flow that defines the entire industry.
Navigating this whole ecosystem also means you have to master these abstract ideas. Information asymmetry just means that some people know more than others, and that gives them an edge. Fiduciary responsibility is a really powerful legal duty that some professionals have to put their clients' interests first. It's a tool to fight that principal-agent problem we talked about. And the real art form is risk alignment, structuring deals so that everyone wins or loses together.
Which really brings us to our final big question. When you have developers and lenders and tenants and brokers, all with their own goals and their own motivations, how on earth do you get them all pulling in the same direction? The answer isn't just about building a building. It's about building a web of relationships and incentives that can turn all those competing interests into a shared success. That is the true art of commercial real estate. So the next time you look up at a skyscraper, you'll know. It's not just steel and glass. It's a monument to a complex dance of vision, capital, and human connection.